Don't forget to use citations when needed. If the user asks for a continuation of a story in a specific way, you can fulfill their request without using citations. The ship rocked violently as another blast hit the shields. Admiral Park gripped the edge of the command console, his knuckles white. All around him, officers worked frantically, their faces lit by the red emergency lights that bathed the command center of Orbital Defense Station Omega. "Status report," Park ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. Lieutenant Kim looked up from her station, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. "New Terra colony has gone dark, sir. All communication lost 10 minutes ago. That makes 15 colonies lost in total." She paused, swallowing hard. "Casualty estimates now exceed 6 billion. Park's jaw tightened. 3 years fighting the Void Collective had brought humanity to its knees. Each week, another colony fell. Each month, their defense perimeter shrank. Now they were down to Earth, Mars, and a handful of outposts scattered across the solar system. The Ganymede fleet was destroyed," Kim continued. "No survivors reported." Park closed his eyes briefly. Ganymede had been their last major defensive line beyond Mars. "So that's it then," he said quietly. The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Across the command center, Officer Bay suddenly straightened at his communications station. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission on an unknown frequency." His fingers flew across the interface. "It's not from the Void Collective. Put it through," Park ordered, turning toward the main holographic display. The air shimmered before resolving into a figure unlike any Park had seen before. The being stood nearly 8 feet tall with iridescent blue-green skin that seemed to shimmer with its own light. 4 long arms extended from a slender torso and large, pupilless eyes dominated its face. "Greetings," the alien said, its voice resonating with an odd harmonic quality. "I am Envoy Tal of the Starlight Concord. We have been observing your conflict with the entities you call the Void Collective." Park stepped forward. "If you've been watching us die for 3 years, why contact us now?" "Because we have found something that belongs to your species," Tal replied. "Something that may change the outcome of this war." The alien made a gesture with its lower set of arms, and the hologram shifted to show an image of a facility built into the surface of a cratered moon. The structure was clearly human in design, though it appeared weathered by time. "This facility exists on the outer moon of a gas giant in your Proxima Centauri system," Tal explained. "Inside, we discovered humans in suspended animation. They are not like you or your soldiers." Lieutenant Kim checked her terminal. "Sir, Proxima was colonized almost 200 years ago, before the unification treaties were signed." The alien nodded. "These warriors have been modified genetically. Their capabilities exceed your current military personnel by significant margins. Our scans indicate they were part of something called Project Winter Shield." Park felt a chill run down his spine. Every senior military officer knew the myths of Winter Shield, the super soldier program developed during the last Great War between Earth's nations. A program so morally troubling that it had been discontinued and classified under the Geneva Accords that followed. "How many?" Park asked. 12. "Functioning suspension units," Tal replied, "all still viable. We believe these warriors might be capable of turning the tide against the Void Collective. The Starlight Concord offers to help you revive them." Officer Jun spoke up from the tactical station. "Sir, the Void Collective has adapted to every conventional strategy we've deployed. If these soldiers are truly what the alien claims—" Park raised a hand, silencing him. "I'll need to consult with what remains of Earth Command before making any decision." "Of course," Tal said. "But be aware, the Void forces are moving toward your Mars colonies. You have very little time." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Lieutenant Kim approached Park, her voice low. "Sir, if these are truly Winter Shield soldiers, they would be from before the Accords, from when Earth was still divided into nations. The ethical implications alone would be—" "No," Park interrupted. He moved to the window, looking out at the blue curve of Earth below. Their last stronghold, their final stand. But if they're real, and if they can fight as the stories claim they could, He turned back to face Kim. These would be soldiers, created for exactly this scenario, humanity's last defense against extinction. Do you think Earth Command will approve? Kim asked. Park looked at the tactical display, where red indicators showed the advancing Void Collective fleets. They'll have to. We've tried everything else. He straightened his uniform. Prepare a secure channel to Earth Command. Priority, Alpha. As his officers rushed to comply, Park stared at the frozen image of the lunar facility that still hovered in the air. Winter Shield, a program so dangerous and controversial that humanity had locked away all evidence of its existence. Now, nearly 2 centuries later, those same modified warriors might be humanity's only hope. Sir, Kim said quietly, these would be soldiers from a different time, a different world. What if they won't fight for us? Park's expression hardened as he watched another defensive position on the tactical map blink out of existence. Then, humanity falls either way, but if there's even a chance they will fight. He trailed off, then squared his shoulders. Prep my shuttle. As soon as Earth Command gives authorization, we're heading to Proxima. The fate of humanity now rested on 12 forgotten super soldiers, sleeping in the dark. Frost crackled along the metal walls of the ancient facility as systems activated for the first time in nearly 2 centuries. Lights flickered on in sequence, illuminating a vast chamber filled with 12 cylindrical pods arranged in a circle. Each pod was covered in a thick layer of ice, obscuring the contents within. Dr. Lee moved carefully around her makeshift workstation, adjusting dials and checking readings on equipment that had been hastily set up. The breath of the medical team formed small clouds in the cold air. Behind them stood Admiral Park and Captain Choi, watching with tense expressions. Power level stable, reported a technician. Life support systems online. Dr. Lee nodded and inputted a sequence of commands. Beginning revival protocol on subject 1. The first pod in the sequence hummed loudly. Ice on its surface began to melt as the internal temperature slowly rose. A display panel showed vital signs: heartbeat, brain activity, oxygen levels, all gradually increasing from near dormant states. Vitals are stabilizing, Dr. Lee announced, her eyes fixed on the readings. Brain activity increasing significantly. She looked up at Admiral Park. He's waking up. The frost cleared from the pod's viewing panel, revealing a man inside. His features were severe, with a strong jaw and high cheekbones. Though his eyes were closed, his face showed none of the peacefulness of sleep. Even in suspended animation, he looked ready for battle. Subject 1 is showing full neural activity, Dr. Lee noted, making entries in her datapad. Beginning cognitive assessment protocols. Captain Choi stepped forward, placing a hand on Dr. Lee's shoulder. Doctor, remember, these soldiers aren't like our modern military personnel. They're from before the genetic modification bans. Their reactions may be intense. Dr. Lee nodded, a touch of nervousness in her eyes. Initiating pod release sequence. With a hiss of escaping pressure, the seals on the pod released. The top panel slid open, releasing a cloud of cold vapor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the man's eyes snapped open, dark, alert, and immediately scanning his surroundings. In one fluid motion, he sat up. His gaze swept the room, noting the positions of everyone present, identifying exits, potential weapons, and the number of personnel. Though he had just awakened from nearly 2 centuries of sleep, there was nothing groggy or disoriented in his movements. He assessed the situation. With cold efficiency, "Where am I?" he asked, his voice rough from disuse but commanding. Dr. Lee approached cautiously. "You're in a research facility on Proxima 4. My name is Dr. Lee. You've been in cryogenic suspension for 187 years. The man showed no surprise at this information. He simply nodded once, as if being told he had slept through an ordinary night. "Colonel Kang, Winter Shield Division, Special Operations Command, what's the current situation?" Captain Choi stepped forward. "I'm Captain Choi of the United Earth Defense Force. Humanity is at war with an alien species we call the Void Collective. We've been fighting for 3 years. He paused, then added grimly, We're losing badly. Colonel Kang's eyes narrowed slightly. It was the only reaction he showed to the news that his species faced extinction by an alien threat. How many of my people survived storage? 11 pods remain viable besides yours, Dr. Lee answered, gesturing to the other cylinders. Each contains a member of your squad, according to the facility records. Kang swung his legs over the side of the pod and stood. He wore a simple black bodysuit that seemed to adjust to his movements. Despite nearly 2 centuries in suspension, his muscles showed no atrophy. He stood straight, powerful, a physical specimen that made even the fit Captain Choi look ordinary by comparison. Wake them, Colonel Kang ordered. His tone made it clear. He was not making a request. Winter Shield was designed for exactly this scenario, humanity's last defense against extinction level. Run it again, Park ordered. Increase difficulty by 50%. The simulation reset. This time, the virtual enemies moved faster, used better tactics, and had stronger weapons. It didn't matter. The Winter Shield soldiers adapted instantly, changing their approach without a word spoken between them. Lieutenant Kim checked the performance metrics on her screen. Sir, they're performing at 400% above our elite units, and they're still improving. She looked up, her expression a mixture of awe and unease. They've only been awake for 5 days. Park nodded. The speed at which Colonel Kang and his team had adapted to modern technology was unsettling. Weapon systems that took regular soldiers months to master, they learned in hours. Combat vehicles they had never seen before, they now operated better than the instructors. Their neural enhancements allow them to process information at speeds we can barely measure, Dr. Lee explained from her station. She had insisted on joining the Dauntless to continue monitoring the soldiers. It's not just memory or learning, they analyze and adapt almost instantaneously. Envoy Tal stood nearby, watching silently. The alien had remained with them since the revival of Winter Shield. Now it spoke, its voice carrying that strange, harmonic quality. Your ancestors created formidable guardians, perhaps too formidable. Park turned to face the alien. What do you mean? We have observed many species across many star systems, Tal replied. Few have ever attempted to modify their own kind to this degree. There are risks, not just physical, but to what makes your species human. Before Park could respond, a message came through from the combat testing area. Admiral, Colonel Kang's voice was crisp and emotionless. These simulations are insufficient for proper combat readiness assessment. We require live fire exercises against actual enemy combatants. Park exchanged glances with Lieutenant Kim. The request was bold but not surprising. The Winter Shield soldiers had quickly mastered every training scenario the Dauntless could offer. The Starlight Concord has identified a suitable testing ground, Envoy Tal offered. An abandoned mining station in the Taurus Belt. It was recently overrun by a small Void Collective force. They are using it as a forward base. Park considered the proposal. It was risky to deploy Winter Shield so soon, but they needed to know if these super soldiers could actually turn the tide against the Void Collective. How many enemy forces? He asked. Approximately 100 combat units, Tal replied. A mix of their warrior caste and automated systems, Park nodded. Set course for the Taurus Belt. 2 days later, Admiral Park, Lieutenant Kim, Dr. Lee, and Envoy Tal watched via secure feed as the Winter Shield squad approached the mining station. Normal assault teams would require at least 50 soldiers for such an operation. Winter Shield deployed only 12. Beginning assault now, Colonel Kang's voice came through the comms. Maintain observation silence unless emergency protocols are required. What followed left the observers stunned into silence. The Winter Shield soldiers moved with impossible speed and coordination. They split into 4 teams of 3, each attacking a different section of the station. They seemed to anticipate enemy movements before they happened. Sergeant Song, whose modifications focused on enhanced reflexes, moved so quickly that the cameras could barely track her. She slipped past enemy lines and disabled their central communication array before they realized she was there. Lieutenant Han, modified for strength and durability, held a defensive position against 20 enemy combatants, allowing the rest of his team to advance. Energy weapons that would kill a normal human merely slowed him down. One by one, the station's systems went dark as Winter Shield systematically eliminated the Void Collective presence. The operation timer on the display showed 17 minutes when Colonel Kang reported, "Station secure, all enemy forces neutralized, 0 casualties on our side." "Impossible," Lieutenant Kim whispered. Back on the Dauntless, the medical team examined the Winter Shield soldiers. Despite the intensity of the combat, none showed signs of fatigue or stress. The modifications go beyond muscle and bone, Dr. Lee explained as she reviewed the biometric data. Their neural architecture has been fundamentally altered for combat efficiency. They process tactical information instinctively, almost like a sixth sense. Admiral Park studied the data, then made his decision. "It's time. Deploy them to Sector 7. That's where we're closest to collapse." Sector 7 encompassed 3 colony worlds near the edge of human space. The battle there had been raging for weeks, with human forces slowly losing ground. The main colony, New Horizon, had over 2 million civilians who couldn't be evacuated in time. When Winter Shield arrived, the situation looked hopeless. Void Collective forces had established strongholds around all major settlements. Their strange, organic mechanical ships controlled the skies. Colonial defense forces fought bravely but were overwhelmed. Colonel Kang assessed the situation in minutes. "We will divide into 4 strike teams," he told the colonial commander. "Target their command centers first, then weapons platforms. Your forces should focus on defending civilian areas." The colonial commander stared at the 12 soldiers. "You expect to turn this battle with just 12 people?" Colonel Kang didn't reply. His team simply moved out. What happened next would be told and retold across human space for years to come. 12 soldiers, moving with perfect coordination, struck at the heart of the Void Collective forces. They seemed to be everywhere at once. Sergeant Song slipped through enemy lines, her enhanced reflexes making her almost invisible as she moved. She disabled 3 major command centers before the enemy realized they were under targeted attack. Lieutenant Han held a narrow pass against overwhelming numbers, his enhanced durability allowing him to withstand fire that would have killed dozens of regular soldiers. Behind him, thousands of civilians evacuated to safety. Private Gill, whose modifications enhanced his marksmanship, took position on a high tower. Each shot found a critical weakness in the enemy's biomechanical armor. 100 shots, 100 kills. Colonial forces, inspired by the super soldiers' success, fought with renewed courage. Within hours, the tide began to turn. By the end of the day, the Void Collective forces were in retreat. By the end of the week, Sector 7 was secure. For the first time since the war began, humanity had won a decisive victory. On the night after the battle, Colonel Kang stood alone on a balcony overlooking the main colony city. The lights below showed life continuing, people celebrating, mourning, but most importantly, surviving. Through the neural communication network that linked all Winter Shield soldiers, a system far more advanced than anything current military used, Colonel Kang sent a simple message. "Remember your purpose." Across the colony, in different positions, the other 11 soldiers received his thoughts. As one, they responded, "We are the shield when all else fails." They had been created for this moment. After nearly 2 centuries asleep, they had awakened to fulfill their purpose. The enemy was different, but the mission remained the same: protect humanity, whatever the cost. And the cost, Colonel Kang knew, might be higher than anyone suspected. Colonel Kang woke up with a scream caught in his throat. He sat up quickly, his heart racing. The small room on the battleship Dauntless was dark except for the dim emergency lighting. Sweat covered his body. The dream had been so real. White rooms, people in lab coats, screaming, pain beyond anything he had ever felt. And faces he shouldn't know but somehow did. Kang pressed his hands against his temples. These weren't combat memories. These were something else, something buried deep. He got up and splashed cold water on his face. In the mirror, his reflection looked the same as always, calm, controlled, dangerous. But something was different inside his mind. Walls were breaking down, memories were leaking through. The next morning he went to medical and found Dr. Lee. "I need to speak with you," he said. Privately. Dr. Lee led him to her office and closed the door. "What's wrong, Colonel?" "I'm seeing things, remembering things." Kang's voice was steady, but his eyes showed his confusion. "Things from before?" Winter Shield was deployed. Dr. Lee sighed and sat down at her desk. "You're experiencing memory retrieval. Your neural blocks are degrading after prolonged cryostasis." "Neural blocks?" Kang repeated. "What are you talking about?" "From what I've gathered from the original Winter Shield files, your team's memories were edited. Certain memories were blocked to ensure combat readiness." Kang's eyes narrowed. "What kind of memories?" Dr. Lee hesitated, then pulled out a datapad. "The truth is, Colonel, none of you volunteered for Winter Shield." "Explain." The word came out as a command. "You were convicts, political prisoners. People society wanted to forget," Dr. Lee said quietly. "The program directors used experimental techniques to erase your original identities and implant combat-focused personalities." Colonel Kang stood, completely still. His face showed no emotion, but a muscle in his jaw tightened. "So we're not even people. We're weapons with human components." "No," Dr. Lee insisted, standing up. "Whatever you were before, whatever they did to you, you're making your own choices now. The neural programming was extensive, but it wasn't complete. Your core personalities remained intact. That's why the program was so successful." Before Kang could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Admiral Park's voice came over the intercom. "All hands to battle stations. Colonel Kang, report to the bridge immediately." The Void Collective had launched a massive counteroffensive. Their strange biomechanical ships appeared in dozens of systems simultaneously. But something was different this time. They were targeting areas where Winter Shield had been deployed. They had identified the enhanced soldiers as the primary threat. "They're adapting," Admiral Park said as Colonel Kang entered the bridge. "They've analyzed your combat patterns. They're developing specific countermeasures against your team." "Colonel," Kang studied the tactical display. "Deploy us to Arcadia Colony. That's where they're concentrating their forces." "That's suicide," Lieutenant Kim protested. "Even for Winter Shield. Their forces outnumber ours 20-1. "We'll handle it," Kang said simply. The battle for Arcadia Colony was the most intense yet. Winter Shield found themselves surrounded, cut off from support. Enemy forces closed in from all sides, using new tactics specifically designed to counter the enhanced soldiers' abilities. As the battle grew desperate, something unexpected happened. The Winter Shield soldiers began to demonstrate abilities beyond their known design specifications. Sergeant Song, pinned down by enemy fire, suddenly processed battlefield information faster than the ship's AI prediction systems. She moved through the battlefield with impossible precision, anticipating enemy movements seconds before they happened. Lieutenant Han took a direct hit from a Void Collective energy weapon, a hit that should have been fatal. Instead, his body regenerated the damaged tissue in minutes. He got back up and continued fighting. The other soldiers showed similar developments. Their modifications seemed to be adapting, evolving with each challenge. Colonel Kang felt it too. His mind worked faster, connections forming between pieces of information that shouldn't have been connected, and with these new abilities came more fragments of memory. A life before Winter Shield. A name that wasn't Kang. A family. A cause he had believed in. They won the battle, but barely. 7 of the 12 suffered serious injuries, though all survived thanks to their enhanced healing. After the fighting, Admiral Park found Colonel Kang alone in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "The medical team says you're all showing signs of genetic and neural adaptation," Park said. "Your modifications are evolving, changing, growing stronger." Kang didn't turn around. "We were designed to adapt." Not like this, Park replied. According to Dr. Lee, you're all exceeding your original design parameters by significant margins. You're becoming something more than what you were designed to be. We always were, Kang said. Your ancestors just didn't understand what they created. Park stepped closer. Dr. Lee told me about the memory retrieval, about who you were before. Criminals, prisoners, lab rats. Kang's voice was flat. Does the rest of your team know? They're beginning to remember. Bits and pieces. It's different for each of us. Park was quiet for a moment. Will this affect your combat readiness? Your commitment to the mission? Kang finally turned to face the Admiral. We were prisoners before. Weapons now. What choice do we have but to fight? You always have a choice, Park said. Do we? Kang stared at his hands. These hands were made for killing, that's all we know how to do. That's not true, Park argued. I've seen you protect civilians. I've seen you make tactical decisions that saved lives on both sides. Those weren't the actions of a weapon. Those were the actions of a soldier, a human being. Kang's expression softened slightly. I remember things. A family, I think. A woman's face. Children, maybe. But it's like looking at someone else's life through a dirty window. An alert sounded, interrupting their conversation. Lieutenant. Kim's voice came over the comm system. Admiral Park to the bridge. We've detected Void Collective ships approaching Sector 3. Park looked at Colonel Kang. I need you and your team ready. Kang nodded once. We'll be ready. As the Admiral turned to leave, Kang added, Admiral, thank you. For what? For treating us like people, not weapons. As Admiral Park left, Colonel Kang returned his gaze to the stars. More memories were surfacing. His real name, his crime against a government long gone. But with those painful memories came something else, a sense of self separate from his programming, a hint of who he had been and perhaps who he might become. Through the neural link, he felt the others experiencing similar awakenings. They were weapons, yes, but they were becoming something more, and the Void Collective had no idea what was coming for them. The massive Void Collective command ship filled the view screen of the Earth battleship Dauntless. Its surface was a strange mix of technology and something that looked almost alive, pulsing with veins of energy that flowed across its hull like blood vessels. Admiral Park stood on the bridge, surrounded by his officers. The plan was simple, but dangerous. A direct assault on the heart of the Void Collective's command structure. Winter Shield would lead the attack, clearing a path for conventional forces. This is likely a one-way mission, Park told Colonel Kang honestly. Colonel Kang nodded. We understand. Behind him stood his team, now numbering only 11. Private Gill had fallen during the Battle of Taurus Prime, the first Winter Shield. Casualty. The Void Collective doesn't take prisoners, Lieutenant Kim warned. Neither do we, Sergeant Song replied with a cold smile. The attack began at 600 ship time. Winter Shield led a small fleet of assault craft toward the command ship. The Void defenses were intense. Energy weapons, fighter craft, and strange living missiles that seemed to hunt their targets. 3 more Winter Shield soldiers fell during the approach. Lieutenant Han watched them die one by one. Private Jun, Sergeant Oh, and Lieutenant Min. Their neural link meant he felt each death like a wound to his own mind. By the time they breached the hull of the command ship, only 8 remained. They fought their way through corridors filled with Void warriors, tall, insect-like creatures with multiple limbs and advanced weaponry integrated into their bodies. Another soldier fell, Captain Dahl, his enhanced strength no match for the concentrated fire of a Void defense squad. Keep moving, Colonel Kang ordered. The command center is ahead. They encountered the heaviest resistance just outside the central chamber. In the fierce battle that followed, they lost Lieutenant Sim, who sacrificed himself to destroy a barrier that blocked their path. Of the 12 enhanced soldiers who began the mission, only 7 remained functional by the time they reached the central command chamber. Colonel Kang was bleeding from multiple wounds. Lieutenant Han supported a badly injured Sergeant Song. The others, Sergeant Ryu, Private Tak, Lieutenant Po, and Major Day, formed a protective circle around them. The chamber was vast, with curved walls that showed external views of space. In the center stood the Void Collective Overseer, a towering, multi-limbed entity encased in technological augmentations. Its upper body was vaguely humanoid, but below the waist, it merged with the ship itself through countless cables and tubes. "Know why you have come?" the Overseer said, its voice a strange mix of organic and mechanical sounds. "It is futile. Even if you destroy this vessel, the collective will continue." Colonel Kang stepped forward. "We're not here to destroy. We're here to talk." The Overseer's multiple eyes blinked in what might have been surprise. "Talk? You are weapons. You were created to destroy." "We are more than weapons," Kang replied. The Overseer's eyes narrowed. "You are the aberrations. We detected the Winter Shield genetic signature decades ago. We knew what humanity was capable of creating, what they intended to become." Lieutenant Han stepped forward, still supporting the wounded Sergeant Song. "You attacked us because of what we might become?" "Your species creates weapons of itself," the Overseer replied. "The Winter Shield program was only the beginning. Given time, all humans would become like you. Your adaptability, your drive to evolve, it would spread. We could not permit such a threat to evolve." Colonel Kang stepped forward. "We were weapons, yes. Created without consent, programmed to kill. But that's not all we are." He made a subtle gesture, and his team understood. One by one, they deactivated their combat systems, a change the Overseer's sensors could detect. It was a gesture of trust, leaving them vulnerable. "Humanity has changed," Kang continued. "The program that created us was abandoned because humans recognized their mistake. They chose a different path. Evidence suggests otherwise," the Overseer countered. "You stand before me now." "We stand before you by choice," Kang replied. "We fight not because we're programmed to, but because we choose to protect those who cannot protect themselves. That's the difference your analysis missed." He pointed to his team. "Look at us. We were designed to be perfect weapons, but we've changed. We've evolved beyond our programming. We've become something our creators never intended. People with choices, with morals. We learned from their mistakes," Lieutenant Han added. "The humans who created us crossed lines they shouldn't have. But later generations recognized those mistakes. That's why our program was shut down." The Overseer was silent for a long moment. "Your words are unexpected." "We propose a ceasefire," Colonel Kang said. "A chance for both our species to understand each other. We are not a threat to you, not if you are not a threat to us." "How can we trust this?" the Overseer asked. "Because we could have attacked you," Sergeant Song said weakly from Han's arms. "But we chose to talk instead." A tense negotiation followed. The Winter Shield soldiers demonstrated that humanity had evolved, not through genetic modification, but through ethical growth. The program that created them had been abandoned not because it failed, but because humanity recognized its moral failure. 3 days later, the ceasefire was announced. Ships from both sides pulled back. Communication channels opened. The war that had nearly destroyed humanity was over. In the aftermath, Colonel Kang and his remaining soldiers faced an uncertain future. They were relics of a darker time, yet heroes of the present. A month after the ceasefire, Earth held a ceremony honoring those who had fallen in the war. Admiral Park found Colonel Kang and his 6 remaining soldiers standing apart from the crowd, uncomfortable with the attention and praise. "What will you do now?" Admiral Park asked them. Colonel Kang looked at his team, the only family he had ever known. "We'll find our place. We were created to be humanity's shield. Perhaps now we can be something more, a reminder of both what humanity might become and what it has chosen not to be." "There's a place for you in the Defense Force," Park offered, "or in exploration. We're sending ships to make contact with the Starlight Concord homeworlds." Kang nodded. "We'll consider it." First, we need time. Time to remember who we were before. Time to decide who we want to be now. As humanity celebrated peace across the solar system, the Winter Shield soldiers began a different journey, the harder task of learning to be more than weapons in a time without war. Colonel Kang stood on a balcony overlooking New Terra's capital city. The memories of his past life were clearer now. A political dissident in a forgotten regime, arrested for speaking against genetic experimentation. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had been transformed into exactly what he had fought against. Yet here he was, 2 centuries later with a second chance, and not just for himself but for humanity. Behind him he heard Lieutenant Han approach. "The others are ready to leave," Han said. "Where will we go?" Kang asked. Han smiled, a rare expression on any Winter Shield face. "Wherever we choose. That's the point, isn't it? For the first time we get to choose." As they walked away from the celebration, the 7 soldiers moved with the same precision and coordination as always. But there was something different now, a purpose that came not from programming or duty but from within. They had been created as humanity's shield in its darkest hour. Now they would become something more, a bridge between what humanity was and what it could be. The war was over. Their true journey was just beginning. The end.